Hello, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee's online worship service. I'm Reverend Dina McFeeters, and I'm honored to serve as Associate Minister. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all that you are carrying with you today and all that your heart longs to set down. We'd like to pay a special welcome to guests joining us today. If you're visiting for the first time or joining us from afar, why don't you say hello in the chat and tell us where you're joining us from? I welcome you to our worship service today by inviting you to repeat our mission after me. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. Let's return to our beloved sanctuary for the lighting of the flaming chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism.
Good morning. My name is Paul Kozadowski, and I'm happy to be your worship associate today. On this Memorial Day weekend, I'd like to tell you about my grandfather, George Koch. George was born in Tomah, Wisconsin in 1910. He grew up on a farm and never finished high school. He left a small town for Milwaukee in his teens and found room and board with a family working at an A&P grocery store. Through that family, he met my grandmother, Gladys, and married her when he was 19 years old. They lived with her family until they could afford a house. On August 14th, 1939, he started working for Weir Steel, the West Allis foundry founded by Todd Weir, who became one of Wisconsin's major philanthropists in the mid-20th century. Name a small university in southeast Wisconsin, and I bet you it has a Todd Weir library or science building. 3 years later, after my grandfather started work there, Weir was part of a massive manufacturing buildup prompted by World War II. George was the foundry's chief inspector, clearing huge metal castings as sound and without flaws before they were shipped off to build tanks used by the Allies. The pressure of that job, imagining that lives could be lost because of a faulty casting, eventually took its toll, and George suffered a bout of nervous exhaustion that kept him bedridden for several weeks. It was not spoken about in my family, and I only found out about it after he died. He remained at Weir Steel after the war and eventually became the general manager of the foundry. Not bad for someone who never finished high school. On August 14th, 1964, he received this wristwatch in honor of 25 years of service. He didn't retire until he was 70 years old, but he stayed on as a consultant to the foundry. And that's when I really got to know him. We spent time together when I was a kid, sleepovers at their South Side duplex, where he and my grandmother lived for 30 years, vacations to Door County with the whole family, and a special fishing trip to Northern Ontario when I was 12 years old. But I got to know him as a person, and not just a kindly grandfather, in the summer of 1981. Now that he was a consultant at Weir, he wanted to improve his writing, so the reports he would occasionally file were clear and understandable. So we went to school together. I took a music theory class to help me on my way to being an arts critic. He decided to take a writing class that met at the same time. Together, we made the commute to UWM 2 times a week. Spending that one-on-one time with him in the car revealed the character that I only had known through family gatherings. He asked me about writing, and I asked him about his years at the Foundry. He was generally a quiet and private man, so I mostly heard about other people at Weir. And I learned how his respect and care for all of the people he worked with, from laborers to the CEO himself, was probably the reason for his success and longevity at the company. But mostly he steered the conversation to my fledgling life, classes I was taking, artists I admired, writing projects I dreamed of. And when my newspaper career started a few years later, he was the first to ask about my stories or reviews, even though the subjects were often unfamiliar to him. So while I was pursuing the meaning of life through art and music, my grandfather early on taught me the deeper, more significant meaning that I carry with me today: curiosity, kindness, respect, decency. When I see his Weir steel wristwatch on the bookshelf in my office, my modest memorial to his spirit and memory, I think of how he helped me see the beauty in the world, in the people around me.
This month's theme of nurturing beauty with this week's holiday of Memorial Day immediately brings to my mind a song entitled Wanting Memories. It's a song written by Issei Barnwell, and the chorus is simply this: I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me, to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Perceiving the beauty in the world can be a challenge at times. So much of our attention is drawn to the destruction, dismay, and distrust all around the globe. Be it international wars, COVID, or acts of domestic terrorism. Be it the attacks on our democracy, the decreasing access to abortion care, or the mental health crises that people of all walks of life are facing. Be it the racial and economic inequities that abound in the areas of housing, education, and incarceration. There is just too much to digest sometimes. How are we supposed to notice the beauty in the world at times like these? How might memories teach us? Today, I am suggesting that we can learn from not only the life-giving memories of our personal experiences, but we can be sustained by and guided by the ongoing living tradition found within the collective of Unitarian Universalism. My personal memories of Memorial Day involve peonies. Do you know these flowers? When I was growing up in Nebraska, the eye-popping pom-poms of peonies were always blooming right around this last weekend in May. Their vibrant magentas, pinks, and whites were matched by their bold fragrance. The sweet smell drew me near, and I could not help but touch their silky layers. The petals were so soft, and depending on how long the flower had been blossoming, how close the bud was to bursting, the bloom might seem incredibly sturdy or surprisingly fragile. My family of origin and I would take peonies like these and visit the grave sites of my ancestors, placing them on their headstones, these vibrant colors made of silky petals. We shared stories about these beloveds. In our particularly stoic way, we took time to reflect on the lives of our loved ones, piecing together lessons we wanted to keep close to our hearts. Through the stories about our ancestors, we came to see the beauty in the world through our own eyes. Close to my heart, I hold stories about the end of my maternal grandfather's life. These memories come to me as if they were a series of 3 vignettes. Number 1. On the morning before my Grandpa Rex died, he made his way out to the strawberry patch. It was early in the season for strawberries, but he found some that were ready for eating. He picked those berries that were just ripe enough and brought them to the side door, setting them on the kitchen counter so that he could eventually enjoy them on his morning bowl of grape nuts. Vignette number 2. Earlier that week, Grandpa Rex had been mowing the grass surrounding the farmhouse where he had lived for 25 years. While doing so, he was careful to mow around the daisies that were starting to grow in the lawn. His was a riding mower, the kind that can turn on a dime. But in order to mow around a daisy, you have to know what you're looking for. And Grandpa Rex had the kind of eye that could spot a daisy in time to protect it from being cut down. Vignette number 3. In preparation for Grandpa Rex's funeral 3 days after his death, my uncle and my father went out to a nearby pasture and dug up a musk thistle. They placed this thistle, complete with its roots held within the clod of Nebraskan dirt, to sit amongst the floral arrangements created by the local florist. Now, to understand this seemingly odd decision to put a pokey thistle amongst the beautiful flowers, you have to know two things. The thistle is a noxious weed, an invasive species, and two, it was a weed that Grandpa Rex took great pains to try to stop from propagating. So this memorial thistle was a reminder of my grandpa's determination and Sisyphusian effort to interrupt the progress of this noxious weed. Each of these vignettes standing alone might not say a lot about a white man who lived for over 85 years on the farmlands of 20th century middle America. Strawberries, daisies, thistles. But taken together, they tell a story of a particular kind of stewardship. Grandpa Rex was a farmer who lived close to the land, growing his own food, protecting and nurturing beauty where he found it, and working against the forces that destroy healthy ecosystems. Grandpa Rex loved what he did what he loved, and saw the beauty in the world in various ways. This was his legacy to me. We each have different personal legacies, and yet there is something to be learned about beauty from our shared collective experience in Unitarian Universalism. This week, I've been playing with the idea that the beauty that I have found in my personal legacy can be applied to our collective Unitarian Universalist experiences. What if, for example, we imagine tending a strawberry patch as embracing our UU covenants? What if we imagine protecting daisies as honoring our theological diversity? What if we imagine digging up thistles as symbolizing our justice making? Let us start with our covenants. Perhaps you have heard of the term covenant within Unitarian Universalist circles. We can think of a covenant as a reciprocated sacred promise that we all aspire to uphold. And when we fail to keep that promise, as we humans surely will, we are invited to try again. Covenants are common in our faith tradition. Let me share just two very obvious examples. First of all, there's covenant in the preamble to our 7 principles. So if you turn to the front of either of our UU hymnals, you will read, Unitarian Universalist congregations covenant with one another to affirm and promote specific principles. We don't say, we believe these principles. We say, we covenant to affirm and promote these principles. This is less about believing and more about doing, embodying, more about taking action to live out our principles. The second example is that covenants are part of any new group that we form. Just recently, in April, I attended the Regional Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association's Mid-America region. It was an online event. About 300 UUs from 10 different states around the region came together for worship, for learning, for business. That's a lot of different people from a lot of different places. One of the foundational documents for the Regional Assembly was a covenant for our time together. This covenant included 5 practices we agreed to aspire to: respectful behavior, self-care and community care, active and anti-oppressive engagement, respect for experiences, and copyright and security boundaries. Now, why might I associate UU covenants with Grandpa Rex's strawberries? I like to imagine our covenants as represented by the boundary around my grandfather's strawberry patch. If you have ever grown strawberries, you might know that most of the varieties of strawberry plants produce runners that reach out to root down beyond the patch. Without a patch's defining edge, the plants will continually reach beyond the borders. This can disrupt the well-being of the other areas of the garden and can also diminish the staying power of the original plants. From this perspective, the borders help to keep the strawberry plants strong and vital. In a similar way, our covenants keep our communities and our congregations strong and hardy. They help us to know what to expect from each other. They bring us back into right relationship, especially if we wander too far beyond what will allow us to flourish. I perceive beauty in covenants and in the borders of strawberry patches. Let us next turn to the theological diversity found within Unitarian Universalism, for this is closely related to our covenants. You see, ours is a non-creedal faith. That means UUs don't all believe the same thing, theologically speaking. We do not require people to swear that they believe in an established set of beliefs. Embracing a covenantal faith rather than a creedal faith gives room for Unitarian Universalism to have a lot of theological diversity under one roof. UU congregations around the country celebrate and honor the wide variety of beliefs that we each can hold. We include UU Buddhists, practicing mindfulness and loving kindness. We include UU Christians, finding inspiration in the teachings of Jesus. We include UU Hindus, valuing the unity that is at the core of religious diversity. We include UU Humanists, seeking community that both comforts and challenges. We include UU Jews, honoring Jewish holidays with inclusive twists. We include UU Muslims, building bridges of cooperation and peace. We include UU Pagans, celebrating the seasons of the year. We include UU Religious Naturalists, being awed by evolution and interdependence. We include born and raised Unitarian Universalists, and even more combinations of seekers. Even though there is rich beauty and complexity in our theological diversity, we don't always have the words on the tips of our tongues to describe our shared faith tradition quickly and accurately. Instead of explaining that ours is a covenantal faith community that lives as if how we behave and treat each other is more important than what we believe, we sometimes too quickly blurt out that UUs can believe anything they want. In fact, just last month, this oversimplification was repeated during an interview on National Public Radio. Rather than saying a UU can believe anything, it might be more accurate to say, Unitarian Universalists hold a wide variety of beliefs that all align with specific principles we aspire to embody. This careful attention to the way we explain our shared UU faith, with its divergent belief systems, reminds me of the careful attention my grandpa gave to the daisies in the lawn. There's no need to diminish our theological diversity by mowing it down with an oversimplified soundbite. We can instead take time to notice the rich beauty of our theological differences and work to protect and promote them, like how Grandpa Rex protected and promoted those daisies. I perceive beauty in our theological diversity and in protecting daisies on the lawn. Now, lastly, let's turn to the justice making of Unitarian Universalism. You see, in addition to covenants and theological diversity, Unitarian Universalists are committed to creating greater justice in the world. You might have noticed this commitment in our principles. The word justice is found in 2 of the currently 7 principles that UU congregations covenant to affirm and promote. Principle number 2 is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And principle number 6 is the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. You might have noticed this commitment to justice when groups of UUs have showed up at protests and rallies in yellow t-shirts proclaiming that we are siding with love. Indeed, our Unitarian Universalist faith does call us to change society for the better. A couple of years ago, the UUA's Commission on Institutional Change wrote a report entitled Widening the Circle of Concern. The authors have a lot to say about our justice-making efforts. I hope you will take some time to read through their report. One concern they articulated that struck me was this one. Justice-seeking practices of Unitarian Universalists are often not grounded on spiritual or ritual principles. Instead, justice-seeking takes the place of ritual and religious life. The authors urge us to take this relationship between our religious lives and our justice-making seriously. They write, justice practices cannot be used as surrogates for deepening our spiritual lives. Our justice work, without theological resources and spiritual practices, leads us down the path of burnout. To counter the status quo takes more than good intent. It takes a faithful commitment to a different way of being and accountability to a broad community and the world we seek to engage. We need to see ourselves as truly interdependent. Did you hear that call to spiritual practices rooted in interdependence? Rather than perceiving ourselves as solely as individuals, we are called to recognize how we are all connected to a communal whole. Rather than acting on issues as standalone problems, we are called to understand all of the interconnections between oppressions, privileges, injustices, and power. Our commitments to justice call us to be about the business of co-creating more inclusive communities. They call us to embody the beautiful mess of our interdependence. If we are to perceive justice-making as spiritual practice, it will require us to not only see musk thistles that need to be dug up. It will also require us to understand the ecosystem of the thistles, to tap into the surrounding nourishment of the land itself, and to be fed by the spiritual interdependence we find there. I perceive beauty in our justice making and in digging up thistles. I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me. We indeed have been reminded of beauty in the world today. The beauty of covenants, the beauty of theological diversity, the beauty of justice making as a spiritual practice. In the days and weeks ahead, may you be reminded to nurture the beauty of the living tradition of Unitarian Universalism. When you smell peonies, when you taste strawberries, when you protect a daisy, when you are surprised by the poke of a thistle, may you be reminded of the complex, interdependent, life-saving beauty of Unitarian Universalism. Blessed be and amen.
Dear ones, I'll leave you with these closing words by Arthur Foote. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our wills and love of truth forever guide us. May it be so.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah.